Turn 1 Soul Ring.
Nice. Oh,
Whew.
bang on.
Oh, this new version of GarageBand. You know what? We don't have time for this today because we got to get to a set review. So we're just going to get right into it. This is Turn 1 Soul Ring. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
And I'm Riley.
And today on the show, we are continuing our Kaldheim set review with part 2. Today we're going to be talking about the black and red cards that gave us a little thrill during spoiler season. And if we have time, we'll get into the green, but only time will tell. So before we get to our first black card, Eric is going to tell us how you listeners can get in touch with us.
You can find us over on Instagram at Turn1SoulRing the podcast, Turn1SoulRing the podcast at gmail.com. We throw everything onto YouTube. The best way to find us is Turn1SoulRing the podcast. Search that out. And we have a Patreon. If you really like what we're doing, you want to check out some stuff over there, definitely go on over to our Patreon page. It's going to be patreon.com/Turn1SoulRing.
And we are also doing a giveaway from our 100th episode. We built a deck live, and currently there is 2 entries, and I think it's the same guy. So go and enter into the giveaway. Listen to the episode. The details are in the episode. Check it out. This gentleman, if you're listening, you know who you are, and I hope you win, but you don't have a steep competition right now. So check
Kevin,
it out.
How would people enter that giveaway?
You can go and find us on iTunes, and if you rate and review us, that is an opportunity to win. That's one entry. The second entry would be to comment on the Instagram post from that episode. We do a new post every week. Comment on that, your favorite card from the deck that we built, or an additional third entry would be to find the YouTube video for that episode and also comment your favorite card from that deck build. And like I said, competition is not very steep right now. So this is a 100 card, fully with tokens, fully sleeved in a deck box, ready to go. Simic commander deck. So you know it's going to be good. It's green and blue.
And it's a really fun episode. Go check it out.
Yeah, we did have a lot of fun. So we are just going to get right to the black cards. We're gonna get Back in Black, Back to Black, R.I.P. Amy Winehouse. So here we go. We are going to start off with everybody's favorite new board wipe. It is Blood on the Snow. It's 4 black for a snow sorcery. Choose one, destroy all creatures, or destroy all planeswalkers, then return a creature or planeswalker card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of snow mana spent to cast this spell. So, unfortunately, unlike Doomscar, this is a 6 mana board wipe. 5 and 6 mana board wipes is kind of what we've come to expect from Standard. But you guys know my proclivity for snow basics in commander decks, especially monocolored commander decks, and I think to the listeners, if you have a monocolored commander deck, just swap out your basics for snow basics. There's really no downside to it. But the downside often to casting a removal or a board wipe rather is that you're paying 6 mana and it doesn't give you a lot of extra mana to rebuild on the turn that you cast it. But what's great about this board wipe is you sort of get to start to rebuild first, because you get to pull a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard and put it onto the battlefield. So it just gives you that little bit of recursion effect on the tail end of a Wrath, and I think I would consider throwing this in my Mikaeus deck.
Oh, for sure.
It's nice to have that flexibility of being able to destroy all planeswalkers as well. It's not something you see every day. Especially
there's a lot of that in this set too, is creatures and planeswalkers.
Yeah, which is a design space that I really like that they're pushing, because planeswalkers, notoriously have been challenging to get rid of at times. It hasn't been a whole lot of removal historically for planeswalkers, but it seems that they're thinking about that a lot more in these recent sets. So it's nice to see. But it's also nice, this snow mana clause. Of course, you have to do a little bit of work with your mana base to make it work. But if you're getting back a 4 CMC or 5 CMC or even 6 CMC creature, like that's really good value to get yourself back on the board. And you can even start looping this Wrath if you really wanted to get degenerate with like a mnemonic wall kind of effect where the creature enters the battlefield and returns instant or sorcery from your
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, like Archaeomancer. Yeah,
exactly.
The whole Dimir thing. Yeah.
So you can just Wrath every turn if you really wanted to, but you could also, like, if you get to 6 converted mana cost of snow mana spent on it, then you bring back a Grave Titan. That might be fun.
Yeah, Liliana Dreadhorde General. That's good too.
Yeah, it also gets Planeswalker, so that's definitely a big plus.
Yeah, and just like you, Kevin, I think I might put this into my ER deck. And that deck has both of those just aforementioned cards in it. Ooh.
Yeah, and it's just there's just no downside to doing it. This sort of makes me think of Decree of Pain, which is from that cycle of spells from Scourge, I believe. And Decree of Pain is 8 mana to destroy all creatures, and you draw a card for each creature. Now, I think I'd rather cast Decree of Pain if I had the mana, but I think that this is another Wrath like that gives you a little something extra. So yeah, it's just a nice little commander card right there. Next up, we have Burning Rune Demon. It's 4 black for a 6/6 Demon Berserker with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for exactly 2 cards not named Burning Rune Demon and that have different names. If you do, reveal those cards. An opponent chooses one of them, put the chosen card into your hand and the other into your graveyard, then shuffle your library.
I like this. We got some Demon Tribal going on here. This would be great in any kind of like deck trying to go for those demons in Commander. Obviously a 6/6 with flying for 6 is also just a super good rate, so nice big old beater that you can tutor out whatever the heck you want. Obviously not just for demons as well, like we're able to grab other cards, so
yeah, just any cards. No, and this would be a great limited bomb as well, just that kind of card advantage, getting a 6/6 flyer for 6. I'm not complaining.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'd never complain about that. You wouldn't catch me complaining about that. That's kind of like like the effect it reminds me of like Gifts Ungiven, where getting one of the 2 of your opponent's choosing, but you could probably split it in a way that it works out in your favor no matter what. Like getting a big threat plus a reanimation spell. So either way, you're going to be getting that big threat onto the battlefield. So yeah, I definitely like it, and Demon Tribal, always for it.
Yeah, get your Shadowborn Apostles where they're still under $10. That's my advice. So next up we have Drog Necromancer. Draugr.
Yeah.
It's this is getting me. This is like another episode of Vikings all over again. So we have Draugr Necromancer. It's 3 and a black for a 4/4 snow zombie cleric. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile that card with an ice counter on it instead. You may cast spells from among cards in exile your opponent's own with ice counters on them, and you may spend mana from snow sources as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells.
This dude is really cool.
Oh yeah. I mean, keep in mind it's he has to be on the battlefield to be able to use this second clause. So it's not like a Gonti effect where you can always be able to cast it. And of course there is the stipulation that snow mana can be spent as mana of any color. So obviously you want to have this in a deck with a lot of snow lands. But this is a really cool effect. Just being able to not only exile cards that would be going to the graveyard. So it's a replacement effect. So they don't get any dice triggers or anything like that. And then of course being able to have that kind of card advantage from your opponent's creatures dying is pretty ridiculous.
And then Absolutely. This card works super well with the Blood on the Snow.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Because we just wipe the board and then we get back the Draugr Necromancer and then we can cast anything that just got wiped away. Even kind of looks a little bit the same. Just the other one's missing an arm, but he's bald with a beard.
Bald with a beard. That's where I'm headed. Next up, we have Draugr's Helm. It's 1 and a black for an an equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 and a black. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie berserker creature token, then attach Draugr's Helm to it. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has menace, and the equip cost is 4. So this is yet another of the cycle, the living weapon 2.0 cycle, we'll call it.
I think this one has a pretty decent rate for when you first play it. Like, you're getting 5 mana for a 4/4 that does have menace, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think if you're looking for kind of like a black artifact equipment deck in Commander, like, you could do worse than this. I think it's a pretty nice to have an equipment that essentially has living weapon, like you said.
Yeah.
Just being able to have a threat on the equipment that you're casting. But I mean, this whole equipment cycle, they're just really strong for limited. So
exactly.
I'm particularly excited for them there. And Draugr's Helm is one of the better ones.
Yeah. And like
that was
we
like
said,
my instant thought was just limited.
yeah. And like we said last episode, like a lot of like this cycle in particular is just a feel good. These are all cards that are going to improve your experience because, you're playing an equipment and you're getting a body to go with that equipment. And that's just feel goodery right there.
Mm-hmm.
If limited wasn't fun enough, they got to throw that at us. Come on.
Yeah.
I hope that didn't sound condescending. I love limited. I'm just not very good at it, but I love it. I love it.
My experience so far with Kaldheim Limited is it is not for the faint of heart. It is really difficult.
Okay, and that's saying something because Riley, you're very skilled when it comes to the limited format.
It's my favorite kind of format, but it's like I think I only cracked some level of success the other day, and it's probably like my 10th draft into the format.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I've done 4 drafts, I think, and only one of them have gone, like, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very complex, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of text on these cards. Next up, we have Dream Devourer. It's 1 and a black for a 0/3 Demon Cleric. Each non-land card in your hand without Foretell has Foretell. Its Foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. And whenever you foretell a card, Dream Devourer gets +2/+0 until end of turn. It's too bad that this wasn't either white or blue, because this would fit really well into the Azorius Foretell precon deck for this set.
For sure, yeah. Yeah. But this guy's
a
fantastic mana dork. Like, he's not only a card that can help ramp your big threats out turns earlier, but also is a threat in himself. Like, if you foretell 1 or 2 cards a turn, like, it's 2/3, 4/3, and swinging in while setting up your game plan pretty effectively.
Yeah, and in limited, there's the whole there's that whole sub strategy of playing when you cast your second spell, and so yeah, like this would help with foretelling cards, multiple cards each turn. Yeah, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also like with that ability, like a lot of foretell cards we see, sometimes the foretell cost is like maybe 1 less, maybe it's the same as its mana cost, and then so having it be the same as its mana cost just with the foretell is really nice, instead of it's like, oh, you have to pay still its mana cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all the most of the lower rarity cards with foretell, to foretell them and then to cast them for their foretell cost, it's the same cost as if you hard casted it, but when you start to get into the higher rarities, you do get that
discount.
Yeah, you get that ability to play, like a 6 mana spell earlier than you would if you were playing 1 land a turn. So and that makes sense, right? Like, usually when we get to higher mana cost cards, they become more powerful. That's a cornerstone of the game. That's why when we get cards that are not appropriately costed, I'll say, it can ruin formats. Or Companion is another one. Next up, we have Egon, God of Death. It's 2 and a black for a 6/6 legendary god with Death Touch. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you can't, sacrifice Egon and draw a card. And this is our first flip card of this episode. So the flip side is Throne of Death. It's 1 black for a legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. I can't tell you how great it is to finally see that on cards, and it's just a thing now.
Yeah.
But anyways, it has an activated ability. It's 2 and a black. Tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard, draw a card.
Card draw's always good. It is nice that on Egon's side, it's not like exile 2 creatures or something. It's just cards in general.
And you know what? The first time I played with him, I thought it was 2 creatures.
Oh, so you're like, this is so much better.
I was like, oh shit, this is going to be hard. And then next thing I knew, I was like, oh wait, it's just any 2 cards. This is fantastic. And of course, just like other previous gods in the cycle, the flip side kind of works well with its face side. So like, for example, if you had 2 Egons in your opening hand, you could start the game off with Throne of Death to start filling up your graveyard, and then, you know, on turn 3 slam down Egon and start swinging in for 6 a turn. So I really like him. I don't know if he's going to be super competitive right now in Standard, but for Commander, like I really like the idea of just having like a kind of self-mill beat stick kind of deck.
Well, we should yeah, Riley, if you're interested enough, you should build around this deck, and then we could do a 4-player pod just all black. Eric, you have Ayara, I have Mikaeus, Riley, you'd have Egon, and Trev would have Crick.
Just
exactly.
All black Commander.
all black everything. We can just listen to Jay-Z on repeat. The name Egon, you know, that makes me think of Ghostbusters, because that's Harold Ramis's character. Is that name ever going to come back? Are we going to start to see Egons?
Why don't we just let Egons be Egons?
Oh boy,
that's good. That's very good. I don't know. Maybe I could. I like it. I don't know if it's short for something, but I don't know. It's getting my loins going. You know, to maybe another one. I don't know. We'll see. Next up, we have Eradicator Valkyrie. It's 2 black for a 4/3 Angel Berserker. It has flying, lifelink, and hexproof from Planeswalkers, and it also has Boast for 1 and a black. Sacrifice a creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or Planeswalker, and this is our first Boast card of this episode, so I'll just explain it. So you can only activate Boast if this creature attacked this turn and only once each turn. So as soon as a creature is declared as an attacker, you can activate Boast. You don't have to wait for blocking or anything. You just as soon as it's declared, you get to Boast.
Yeah, why don't you brag about it?
Exactly. That's gonna be the next one. Is brag. They're gonna start to scrape the bottom of the barrel soon. There's only so many adjectives.
Yeah, this card's pretty good. Obviously, if like, especially I think for like Standard, if you're going something against doing like a Planeswalker strategy, this card's really good against that. And then having like an evasive creature that has lifelink is also always something that's really nice. But anyone going for like a sacrifice strategy, like just every single turn, you're able to get that effect if you have some way of triggering that. So,
is this a mythic?
Yes,
yeah. Mythic rare. Yeah, it's mythic. Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry,
like,
everybody. I'm colorblind, so sometimes the mythic and the rares look too similar.
Together.
They don't make the mythic rares red enough. You know what I'm saying?
there's too much text on it to be a rare.
Yeah, that's also a good indicator.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty strong card in a vacuum, but I don't like. I guess it depends how much you're gonna need Planeswalker hate in the Standard meta. But of course, like if you're going for like a Black-White Angels deck in Commander or something like that, like this is going to be a fun include. And I particularly like it because like in older formats like Historic, like this is an option that you can slot in against like a control deck running a bunch of Teferis. And well, I guess is Little Teferi still legal in Historic?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Did he get banned?
I don't know offhand.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
It's a good
Hey,
question.
you know what? Let us know in the comments.
But
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is I wish this was around when Little Teferi was running around rampant.
Yeah.
Because, like, this would have been a really nice card to have during the War of the Spark era of Standard.
Very much, yeah. And they're like, hey, you get it now. And there's not many, like, popular Planeswalker strategies at the moment.
Maybe
Yeah.
they didn't want to put this in from a story perspective, something like this at least, because it has hexproof from Planeswalkers. So it could have gone all like Arya Stark on Nicol Bolas and just taken him
Yeah.
out, right? And just having 8 years of character building. But you know,
Taken
that's
out by
just
an
me.
angel.
I didn't feel personally attacked by the last season of Game of Thrones. You know, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and like I think the boast ability is actually really good. Like I might even throw this into a Yara because I'm trying to sacrifice creatures, and then being able to have like everyone else have to sack a creature, I think can be viable. Sometimes somebody is playing Voltron or only has like a couple like really good creatures out there. This is an easy way to get rid of that because you can attack somebody else who's not able to block or something like that and get rid of somebody else's problem stuff too. So.
Yeah, and it does have the double black pips, so it works well with that kind of devotion alternate win con you have with that deck.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Feed the Swarm. It's 2 black for an instant. Exile target creature or planeswalker.
Feed the serpent.
What did I say? Feed?
You said feed
Swarm.
the swarm.
Feed the Swarm.
Yeah,
that's
that was the one in a black enchantment
Zendikar.
removal in black.
Yeah, that's good too. That's good too.
Not in the set though.
Feed the Serpent is premium removal at common, and I'm thinking about this for limited. You know, I think this is just a fantastic card, and I don't think it's gonna stick around too terribly long in packs. So if you're drafting this set and you're in black, you might want to grab this when you see it.
Yeah,
You
pretty
got it,
solid
man.
piece of interaction. But it's interesting because we had a similar card back in Ixalan, Vraska's Contempt, which was basically this card plus
But rare.
gain 2 life at rare, which is
at
just
rare.
crazy. Like how
At
how
one
things
time,
have
and
come.
that also saw a ton of standard play. Like at one time, that
did.
card was like almost $20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you get Feed the Serpent, which is almost the same card. Of course, you don't have to gain 2 life, but like boohoo, you've got a common.
Yeah.
Gaining 2 life makes it a rare.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Next up, we have Haunting Voyage. It's 4 black for a sorcery. Choose a creature type. Return up to 2 creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. And the foretell cost is 5 black. So unlike most foretell cards, the foretell cost on this card is more than the hard casting it, but that's because you
It's
you
so
get a
much
little
better.
more if you foretell. It is much better, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, 2 creatures for 6 mana. If those are the creatures that you really need, is great. I think that's a fine rate, but an effect like this that can get you back into a game of Commander. I'm thinking about this card for Commander. You know, I used to run Patriarch's Bidding in my Sliver deck before I put the Companion in there, and I had to take out any double mana pip cards. But and Patriarch's Bidding, every player chooses a creature type. It's 3 black for a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature type and then returns all creatures of the chosen type from their graveyard to the battlefield. And you know, this card is 2 more mana if you foretell it. Well, technically it's 4 more mana because you're paying a total of 9 to foretell it. But it's a one-sided effect. So, you know, I would think about putting this card, like if you have a black tribal deck, black commander tribal deck, I would think about sliding this card in there. I mean, you're probably already running Patriarch's Bidding, and you know, if you've ever cast cards like that or like Replenish in an enchantment deck, you know, that kind of thing where you're building your deck around that strategy. And yes, your opponents get some amount of value off of it, but nowhere near the value that you get. So I think, you know, I think cards like this always deserve a second look, especially this card, which only helps you. But Yeah, I just think this card could get you back in the game after a board wipe, and that always feels good.
Yeah, looks like a pretty fun, splashy kind of card, but obviously, like 7 mana is nothing to scoff at. Like it's quite a big cost, especially these days where the CMC of most commander decks are getting lower and lower and lower. But if this is kind of your end game, like maybe you're doing kind of a self-mill zombie sort of deck in Dimir or what have you, like this could definitely be an option. But on its face, like the 6 mana to return 2 creatures, I'd sooner run an effect like Victimize, which makes you sacrifice a creature and bring back 2 creatures for 3 mana. Obviously that's
or Living Death, which just gets
yeah,
right.
Yeah, so I'd probably like this would be on kind of the it'd be on one of the cards that I would be tempted to run, but I wouldn't be surprised if I end up cutting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But like I guess thinking about it from like a purely mono black perspective, after green, like black is the color that can on its own ramp, the next most behind green. So, getting to that amount of mana isn't, before turn 7 isn't out of the question. But like you said, it is a very splashy card.
Yeah, and then like I think it's really like I might even put this in Jarina because it's like if there is some sort of board wipe or something that resets the position of the board, and then cast this, get back like 5 creatures after a board wipe. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it all depends on the speed of your meta. Like, are you getting to those turns, right?
Yeah.
Next, we have Poison the Cup. It's 1 black for an instant. Destroy target creature. If this spell was foretold, scry 2, and the foretell cost is 1 and a black.
Again, another great removal spell in black.
Mm-hmm.
I'm liking how these are instant as well.
Yeah. At its worst, it's just a straight up murder.
Yeah.
And I mean, at its best, you're scrying 2 after you Doomblade something, right?
Yep.
So,
I'll take it.
Yeah, just a pretty straight up clean removal spell.
Yeah.
We have Rise of the Dreadmarn next. What's a Marn? It's 2 and a black for an instant. Create X 2/2 black zombie berserker creature tokens, where X is the number of non-token creatures that died this turn, and it has foretell for a single black.
Yeah, like again, can be good for commander if somebody does board wipe or something. At least we're getting some 2/2 zombies out of it. I don't see how good, especially like not very good in limited. You're probably going to get like 1 or 2.
Yeah, like
sometimes
that's probably the ceiling I would think in limited.
Yeah, it also counts your opponent's creatures that are dying too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why it could be really impactful in commander, right? Like if it's somebody else's turn and they board wipe and you're getting to untap with all those 2/2s, you can really spread that damage around.
Yeah, I like. Obviously, this is not like an auto include by any means, but most of these effects that we've seen, where it's on like a flash creature that counts the number of creatures that have died under your control, or like a is a Whisperwood elemental, the 4/5 that sacks itself to manifest for each creature that's gonna die. Similar effects have been like 3 to 5 mana, but the fact that you can kind of foretell this early on in the game and set up for a turn where you just have a spare black mana left over available to you, just as kind of like an insurance against a board wipe, or even use it in your favor, like if you set up your own board wipe, this could be pretty backbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely an intriguing card.
Yeah.
Rune of Mortality is next. It's 1 and a black for an enchantment aura rune. Enchant permanent. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, as usual. And as long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it has Death Touch. As long as enchanted permanent is an equipment, it has equipped creature has Death Touch.
Yeah, it replaces itself, and we're giving stuff Death Touch.
That's it.
Yeah, well, like where do you see this?
It's kind of cute, like if you put it on a god, because it gives you some devotion. It cycles, and of course you can enchant the enchantment, right? The god before it turns
Yeah.
into a creature.
Right.
That's more cute than like useful, because giving a god death touch is like whatever. But also, I don't know, like in limited, I initially looking at the set was thinking that the runes might have had a bit more of a role to play, but like the whole cycle plus some of the cards that care specifically about runes are like uncommon and above. So it's hard for it to all come together, and the payoff is not that worth it, especially since like you're not pumping any stat line, you're just granting death touch.
Right.
I think if like I've had an idea for like a mono black equipment deck in mind, and this could be something that maybe I see play in that, but even then, like I'm more focused on the artifact synergies and the equipment synergies and less on the enchantment synergies. So I think that's more cute than anything, but I don't know.
It's cute. It is cute.
It's cute. It's a cute little blade.
Skemfar Avenger is next. It's 1 and a black for a 3/1 elf berserker. Whenever another non-token elf or berserker you control dies, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. This fits right into the Golgari elf precon. I don't know if it's I don't recall if it's actually in the precon, but considering the way they've been treating us, it probably isn't. Anyways,
you gotta buy the packs.
You gotta buy the packs. You gotta buy the
packs to get this card.
Yeah, I've had an elf dredge list on my list of decks to put together, and this kind of seems right up its alley. Just as a cheap elf, as a decent threat in itself, like a 3/1, can trade up pretty well, but also just having the ability to sacrifice your elves to like Skull Clamp to get an extra card out of the deal seems pretty fun to me.
Yeah, and like we've been getting some good green black elf stuff in Commander Legends, and now there's some more support for it in Kaldheim here.
Yeah. We have Turgrid, God of Fright, next. 3 black for a 4/5 legendary creature god with menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. What the hell? Okay, it's a flip. It's a flip card. So the other side is Turgrid's Lantern. It's 3 and a black for a legendary artifact. Tap, target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card, and you can pay 3 and a black to untap Turgrid's Lantern. And it's just 3 and a black : so you can just, if you have infinite mana, which is not hard to do in black
mana, yeah.
It's pretty easy. You can just kill everybody. This is like Torment of Hailfire on a stick. I love it.
Yeah, it's Torment of Hailfire in the land zone. Yeah.
Riley, are you getting PTSD from all the Torment of Hailfires we cast on you?
I mean, okay, like on its front side, what?
I know, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Like
this is a cheaper and better It That Betrays.
It's just absolutely absurd.
It is super crazy.
I feel like this is like one of those decks that you put together, you pilot once, you ruin everybody's day, and you put it away and never touch it again.
Probably,
at least from my perspective,
so.
that's the kind of like the power level.
I don't know how you do this and like it's fun to play against. I really don't.
No, it seems brutal. It's like if you've ever played against a Grave Pact and had a bad time, like holy shit, this is gonna give you a
just
whole
amplifies it.
Yeah, a whole new experience here.
Very powerful.
I wouldn't mind putting this in the 99 because if you chance upon drawing it,
Sure, yeah, that could be fun, but like.
Yeah, but as the commander, no, like that's just.
Yeah, I still even like I run It That Betrays in a couple of commander decks, and it still feels bad to play it. I don't feel good.
If you can like It That Betrays and then cast the All Is Dust. Ooh, it's good stuff.
Oh, that's very good. And you know what, Eric? a lot of those decks with It That Betrays have All Is Dust.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, but obviously being mono black, like it's so easy to make your opponents discard cards, and
Yeah.
it's also so easy to like find yourself doing that kind of theme, and those decks, like I don't know, I've put them together, I've played them before, and it just doesn't make for the most exciting play experience.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's something you kind of have to ask yourself, and it's fine to pilot these kind of decks every once in a while, but like over time, this is probably not one of those decks that you can get like repeated amount of fun games out of.
Yeah, because I think, I think what's going to happen is, back before we were living in a pandemic, I would go to game stores and play Commander, and especially when I went to competitive events, I would ask people, let me rephrase that. When I wouldn't go to competitive events, because when I went to competitive events, I would just play the competitive decks. Yeah. But when I wasn't playing competitively, I'd ask people if they were playing like stacks, because that's not something that I take a great amount of joy from piloting or playing against, and I have piloted it. I've had the experience to know enough to know that I don't like it, and probably much like the discard strategy, what probably will end up happening is your play group will start playing decks to either directly counter what you're doing or play decks that just win really, really fast before you can get your engine off the ground. And that can be fun. Like I think fast, kind of more CEDH level, not level, but style of play can be fun. But I just think strategies that tend to upset the balance of enjoyment tend to force people to directly counter what the deck that's upsetting that balance is trying to do. So, it's a very powerful card, but I don't know how much fun any play group is going to have with
it. Also, there's a deck tech from about a year ago, the Kroxa Titan of Death's Hunger. This card fits great with that deck.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Good episode.
It would also be good in tiny. It would also be good in tiny bones, which I also thought about building. But then I thought about what Riley said, a minute ago or so.
Yeah.
Anyways, we have Valki, God of Lies next. It's 1 and a black for a legendary creature god, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card they revealed this way until Valki leaves the battlefield, and you can pay X to choose a creature card exiled with Valki. With converted mana cost X, Valki becomes a copy of that card. And the flip side is it's a flip card. It's Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter.
T-Balt.
It's 5 black-red for a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker Tibalt. As Tibalt enters the battlefield, you get an emblem with you may play cards exiled with Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. The +2 is exile the top card of each player's library. The -3 is exile target artifact or creature, and the -8 is exile all cards from all graveyards and add 3 red to your mana pool. Nice.
Yes. Yeah. This Tibalt, Valki, super cool. It is not only like can you play it as your commander, because of course the front face is a legendary creature, but of course you can cast Tibalt from the command zone as your planeswalker as well, planeswalker commander. But it's nice that on the front end, you're probably not going to focus too much on this side if you're running it as your commander. But Valki hits each opponent, which is usually an effect you don't see in like a Mesmeric Fiend or Brain Maggot kind of effect. It usually targets a player. But
it's usually something we don't see, especially in a standard set, right? Other than extort, right? Like that was like that was a kind of a mistake.
Yeah, but Valki of course hits each opponent, and then you have a choice of those 3 creatures, assuming you hit, to turn Valky into those creatures. Notably, it just becomes that creature. Like, it loses this ability. So keep that in mind. It's not like you can start flipping between different creatures. But it just becomes that creature. And on the flip side, like Tybalt, being able to cast anything that's exiled with Tybalt, like all 3 abilities exile stuff. So this is card advantage galore. This is pretty fantastic. And of course, you have the emblem with the ability to cast this stuff. So even if Tybalt leaves the battlefield, you can still cast that stuff. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, which is super great.
Mm-hmm.
So the other interesting part about this, if you cascade, you can actually cast the reverse side. So there's been talk for Modern with Jund, and you can Bloodbraid Elf, and if you hit Valky, you can cast the Tybalt side.
Mm-hmm.
So that is value.
That's greasy. I like it.
Yeah, there's too many people running around with Tybalt trickery decks, though, casting Emrakul's on turn 2.
But what is the like? What are the odds on that happening? Like how consistent is that kind of thing?
It's actually like pretty consistent, assuming there's no disruption. But I think Frank Carson, he had a couple articles running the numbers on it, and it was like in the realm of like 91%.
Oh wow, that's
pretty
good.
Pretty ridiculous.
So our last black card is Vargoth, Bloodsky Sire. It's 2 and a black for a legendary creature demon rogue 2/3 with death touch, and it has boast for 1 and a black. Target player searches their library for a card, then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. So we got a vampiric tutor for an extra generic mana. Yeah.
I think this is really good for Commander because you obviously have the option to be able to possibly somebody may not have creatures or something like that, and so you can just like get in with the open there, and you get to search your library. It also has, because it says target player, so there's even some sort of politics you can do with that ability as well. Maybe there's a problem on the board, and you can work out a deal with somebody to get a removal spell or something like that.
Yeah, it could be fun for either like a combo strategy or like a toolbox strategy. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
and there's always somebody that doesn't have a creature, and it also has death touch, so
you're not necessarily going to want to block anyway.
We're going to move on to red now, and our first red card is Basalt Ravager. It's 3 in a red. Bath salt.
He's doing some bath salts.
Yeah. It looks like he did. This is his hallucination. It's 3 in a red for a 4/2 giant wizard. When it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to any target. I like to see that. Where X is the greatest number of creatures you control that have a creature type in common.
This is pretty cool for like a goblin style deck.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't, I'm thinking about like giants or wizards, but yeah, this could really go in.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't have to count himself. Deck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right?
It could be pretty fun. Or like changelings, tribal.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So little thing. You could also do like blink strategies, so you just get repeated value from his enter the battlefield.
Yeah, this could be like the red Gray Merchant. I mean, I know we already have sort of that type of card from that block. There's like a red Minotaur that does something similar to
counts devotion. Yeah,
counts devotion. But this could be in the same vein, but for a tribal deck, and you could just blink this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the stat line, like being a 4/2 and having this enter the battlefield dealing damage ability, reminds me of like Flame Tongue Kavu. But of course, like with Flame Tongue Kavu, it could only target creatures, and it didn't have the like updated template of like targeting creatures your opponents control. So if it was the only creature coming into the battlefield, it would have to target itself and kill itself. But Basalt Ravager, it's nice that you can point the damage anywhere, including somebody's face or at a planeswalker as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have Bergi, God of Storytelling, next. It's 2 and a red for a legendary creature god, 3/3. Whenever you cast a spell, add a red to your mana pool until end of turn. You don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. So I think I see a tribal boast commander deck in the future.
Boast or Storm?
The flip side is Harnfell, Horn of Bounty. It's 4 and a red for a legendary artifact. Discard a card. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. I'm really more of a fan of this side of the card, just because that's a crazy amount of card advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course the cards are exiled, so you can't discard. You can't like repeatedly discard to it, which is probably for the best.
I know that, Riley. I know that.
But it is still some solid card advantage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the time being.
Yeah, obviously best thing is like later game. Like I don't need these lands. Just turn in more card advantage.
Exactly. But I feel like the boast ability is kind of like flavor text. I can't imagine running her for the boast ability. Like just being
both.
The first triggered ability is so strong, being able to generate mana off every like card or every spell you cast. Like seems pretty great with rituals, seems pretty great with 0 mana or 1 mana cantrips. I
wonder how like good she'd be in like 3's a little high for like modern Storm.
Mm-hmm.
But still getting like an extra mana off everything is like really what that deck needs. So yeah, interesting.
We have Calamity Bearer next. It's 2 red for a 3/4 giant berserker. If a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead.
Giant tribal.
Yep. Just wreck face.
Yeah. I also like the art on this card is really cool because it's like a geared up like giant, like he's got all this armor on and stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with that giant.
No.
But I mean, on his face, he's kind of like a 6'4".
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
he
doubles like all of your other giants.
Yeah, because he doubles his own. Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd ignite the world tree itself if he could. Why can't he?
I don't know. I guess he
does it not. Maybe it doesn't set ablaze.
Maybe he needs to triple his damage.
Get him that fiery emancipation.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
So notably, like, interesting rules interaction with how doubling damage works. I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but when you go to assign your damage that you'd be dealing, you have to assign it as if you weren't going to be doubling that damage. So, for example, if your opponent blocks with a 2/2 and a 2/3, you would have to pick how much damage you're going to be assigning prior to the damage being doubled. So, like, if you blocked or if you dealt damage to the 2/2 first, you'd have to assign 2 points of damage and then 1 point of damage to the 2/3. And then from that point, once that damage is assigned, the damage being dealt would be doubled. So you'd end up doing 4 to the 2/2 and 2 to the 2/3. So just a little bit of a weird rules interaction. But yeah, keep that in mind if you're going to be doing some giant tribal and doubling damage.
That's good because I actually did not know that.
Fun facts with Riley.
That's right. There's a lot of that going on. I'm sure longtime listeners of the show know this. Eric or Riley will say, a rules interaction, and I'll be like, oh, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. We have a Demon Bolt next. It's 2 and a red for an instant. It deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you can foretell it for 1. There's not a lot of burn spells in this set that deal damage to any target. There's quite a few that let you target a creature or a planeswalker. But what do you guys think about this one?
Great for limited.
Yep.
It's fantastic. It's one of the best commons.
And it being a common is like really good at instant speed for removal. So might see play in. I can see it being played in standard because like if you're mono red, you have limited options as to what your removal is. So, but this not being able to go face is kind of the spot that holds it back for seeing a lot of play. But obviously, like 3 mana for 4 damage to the face is unheard of. So
yeah, no, they're not gonna
I think.
Yeah, I think there was like I think it was Slaying Fire or something like that in Eldraine. Yeah, because it had like the Adamant ability, where if you spent 3 mana, it dealt 4 damage instead of 3 damage to any target.
Yeah.
But of course, Demon Bolt not being able to hit players' faces is kind of like a limiting factor for like a mono red burn. But of course, like if you're doing like an Izzet control or something like that, you could do worse.
Yeah.
You know, the name of this card, I remember hearing the name on some other podcast, and I thought it was a black card immediately when they said the name, because it was Demon Bolt. Like, I think, you know, not to be too picky, I guess, but I don't know, I feel like Devil Bolt would be better, because like Devils is like the red. And there are probably some demon creatures that are red, but it's I don't know. I just, if this was like a red black card, I don't know. That's the name just kind of threw me for a loop when I found out it was a mono red card.
Yeah, there's an uncommon legendary in the set that's a demon type. So I think red black in the set is spread across berserkers and demons. I think that's kind of the types they're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even the flavor text is Varagoth, which we touched on in the black section.
There you go.
Good old black section. Next up, we have a Dragonkin Berserker. It's 1 in red for a 2/2 human Berserker with first strike. Boast abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control. And it has a boast ability of 4 and a red. Create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying.
So it's like the second ability there, where boast abilities you activate cost 1 less for each dragon, is pretty much just for himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
yeah, unless you're running a bunch of red changelings.
He works really well with himself.
Yeah. But it's like you having actual other boast creatures as having dragons out and that being effective that way, I just don't think is gonna come into play.
Yeah, that's a very parasitic community right there.
I mean, it being a 2-mana 2/2 with first strike is not bad on his face, but
I think it's a good card.
Yeah, just having that late game potential, and if you care about dragons, like start pooping out dragons.
Well, even if you don't, I mean, and like, I don't know, like, could this see play in like medium red in Canlander? Like, it gets you. You know, it does get you that 5/5 body. It does work really well on its own and late game. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about medium red, but definitely like in a more aggressive bent red strategy. Like, would you run this in your burn deck, Kevin?
Oh, so you think it would be better in a more aggressive deck?
I feel like it would be better in an aggressive deck.
Okay, I would. I was thinking it was too. I guess I'm more focused on getting that 5/5 dragon, but just a 2/2 for 2 with first strike is the more aggressive side of the card. Yeah, no, I would definitely try it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like really strong, and there's also like a few creatures in this set that have like small toughness. Mm-hmm. And so this is also like a really good limited pick because the first strike's really good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a great 2-mana 2/2. Like,
yeah,
you're not gonna get much better than that. But as far as like an aggressive strategy, I think would really appreciate having something like this, because it's a nice hedge against mana flood too, right? Like if you have a game where you just end up with too many lands and you need somewhere to put it, like it's a good place to sink your mana into to get a 5/5 flying dragon.
Yeah, absolutely. We have Dual Strike next. It's red for an instant. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy, and it has foretell for a single red.
This is pretty sweet, especially being able to set it up for only foretelling for like 1 red. I feel like in like the Izzet standard decks, this card fits super well into.
Well, yeah, any of the cards that have just the foretell for a single colored mana, and there are a few of them in the set, it just makes a card that you would have to leave up maybe too much mana for. Leave up, it's sort of like the Path to Exile effect in Modern. It's like you just leave up 1 white. It's so efficient, and it's just it's almost like you don't even feel it. It's like, yeah, I can. There's so many times when you're mana inefficient and you have 1 mana left over.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do like the way that this card sets itself up. Yeah, because there is a big difference between 1 and 2 mana. So traditionally you see these kind of effects at 2 mana. So unfortunately, like I do prefer the templating of copying something that's already on the stack, but I'm not going to complain too much about this. It seems like a fun way to double your spells if you care about doubling your spells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a Dwarven Hammer next. It's 2 and a red for an equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 2/1 red dwarf berserker creature token, then attach Dwarven Hammer to it. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has trample, and the equip cost is 3. I love seeing people, on the social media who still complain about artifacts that are colored. You still get the odd person that is like, they should be colorless. And I don't know. Anytime someone complains about something that I am just couldn't give less of a shit about it, I don't know. It kind of gives me, I don't know. It just makes me feel good. Anyways, what do you guys think about this card?
Well, I think
I like it.
Yeah. If for limited, it's I think arguably one of the strongest of the cycle. Is the strongest of the cycle, because it's got the nice balance of being like a pretty good equipment on its face. Like obviously nothing you'd write home about, but 3 mana for an equip 3 that gives a stat line boost of +3/+0 and trample. Like that's not bad. And being able to cast it for essentially 5 and get a 5/1 out of it that has trample, obviously is going to get in and it's going to be chump blocked, but you're going to get some damage through. And then from that point, only having to pay 3 to equip it and turn any of your creatures into a significant threat is a big game. So I like it for even in Commander, like if you do have an equipment matters deck, like a Valduk deck or something like that.
Or the new one from Commander Legends, that 0 mana guy.
Yeah. Like the Cobalt. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a pretty good rate. Like it's if you think of is it Colossal Hammer? No, not Colossal Hammer. I'm thinking of the one locks it on Warhammer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It has a very similar stat line. Of course, that one also grants lifelink, but
lifelink.
That's a pretty classic piece of equipment, and this is basically the same rate, with a little bit of upside of giving you a 2/1 to immediately attach it to if you spend 2 more mana on it.
Yeah, that is a great clause that they've put on this whole cycle. And Locks It on Warhammer is so classic that it got knocked down to uncommon. That's how classic it is.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, Equip 3 is still on kind of like the steeper end of cost, but it's not Equip 4. Like, Equip 4 is, like, brutal.
Ugh.
But, so I think that's why Dwarven Hammer beats out Draugr's Helm as far as my favorite version of this cycle. Because Draugr's Helm, obviously giving you essentially a 4/4 with Menace out of the deal, it has that Equip 4, so it makes it a little bit harder to re-equip it after the fact. But, Dwarven Hammer is pretty solid.
We have Frostbite next. It's 1 red for a snow instant. It deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control 3 or more snow permanents, it deals 3 damage instead. So again, this would be fantastic if it went face. This would be a lightning bolt if you had a snow permanent. But is it... and I might have mentioned this last episode, but like we had some cards that cared about snow mana but weren't snow permanents or card types themselves. But then we have snow instants, and we have it just costs a red mana. But I guess like why is it a snow instant? It cares about snow permanents. I don't know if there's a good answer to that question, but it just seems a little inconsistent.
I think the factor that determines the super type of snow is if it cares at all about snow. And in this case, it cares about counting the permanents that you have. But like notably, it's not counting the lands, it's counting snow permanents in general. So even if you have
That's
like
nice.
a couple snow
Yeah.
creatures, like it's going to count those.
Right,
Which is a little
nice
weird. Like it's you jump from one to the other. Like some care about only lands, some care about all your permanents, and
some care about specifically mana spent to cast it. And I don't know, and when we're talking about a standard set, I always think about it in, first of all, limited, sealed, and standard, right? That's how I think of these sets first and foremost. I mean, some, especially in recent years, we clearly get cards printed into standard sets that are for Commander, that are for the sets that I didn't just outline. But I think in this scenario it's a snow permanent because we do have to draft the basic snow lands with the non-basic snow lands, whatever you open up in your pack. So to make these snow cards work, you do need to change how you would normally draft. So I think giving you a snow permanent just gives you a little bit more latitude when drafting, because this is a pretty good removal spell at common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even for standard, like this is a fantastic rate with very little investment as far as how you can enable the 3 damage. Just given that like you have
there's really
snow basics available to you, so
there's very little opportunity cost to just swap out your basics in your standard deck with Kaldheim snow basics, or be a cool person and swap in the Ice Age snow basics, which are like the islands are like $5 now. It's crazy the price range of snow basic lands from like Ice Age, Cold Snap, Modern Horizons, and now Kaldheim. Like Kaldheim, it's like 50 cents, and Ice Age is like it's like $5. Like it's percentage wise, it's a ridiculous price increase, but they are the most beautiful ones in my opinion.
I'm actually kind of surprised this card doesn't go face, because like they print Shock, which is 2 to any target. I know they said they're never gonna have another Lightning Bolt, but like technically this does have the hoops to go through that you need snow permanents.
And it's not Lightning Bolt, but maybe they in Modern, maybe they don't want people to have 2 play sets of Lightning Bolt in their deck. How hard would it be to put snow basics into your deck, right?
Not at all.
Exactly. Wouldn't be hard at all.
That's a good point.
I just love the art on this card because it's not, it's Frostbite. It's 2 separate words, and it's like some creature, creepy like bite. Like he's gonna take that arm when he bites down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We have Goldspan Dragon next. It's 3 red for a 4/4 dragon with flying and haste. When it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. Treasure tokens you control have tap. Sacrifice this artifact. Add 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool.
That's a nice little upgrade.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
That is a 100% upgrade.
So obviously having a good turn with like a dockside and having the Goldspan Dragon out there.
Yeah, it gives me the chills. This card is great. Like, it's just a fantastic threat. Doubles up your treasures. Yeah, I
and makes treasures.
Yeah,
protects itself.
I managed to pick one up in limited, and it was pretty great. Pretty great top deck. I'll give it that. My opponent was at 4. They stabilized, and I was like, bam, Goldspan Dragon.
Oh, nice.
Got him. We have Magda Brazen Outlaw next. It's 1 and a red for a 2/1 legendary dwarf berserker. Other dwarfs you control get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. Sacrifice 5 treasures. Search your library for an artifact or dragon card. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So thinking about this as a commander, I think I'd probably lean more towards the dwarf artifact end of things, just because like that seems to work. That seems to be more synergistic with what this commander is trying to do. I don't really want to tutor for a dragon too often, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
I want to tutor for dragons.
Well, I mean, we all want to tutor for dragons, but I
Yeah.
don't know how easy it's going to be.
Pairs nicely with Dockside Extortionist.
Yes.
I mean, it's an honorary dwarf, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, obviously, like for longtime listeners, everyone knows I love dragons, so I'm kind of excited for this card. I want to be able to like tutor out just like a lot of like, yes, it's only just like one single dragon, but also like it's a big beater on the board, so you're like, oh yeah, I just got this big 7/7. Like, what's up?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like cool because like I think it'd be kind of neat to build it with having like dwarfs and dragons, and then of course having some like backup with the artifacts. But you want to have some way of chopping your dwarfs all the time to keep getting more treasures to keep tutoring out of your deck and stuff. So
Yeah, and notably, like one way to do that is with vehicles. So you could even have something like a smuggler's copter.
yeah.
Even though it says crew 1, you can tap as many dwarves as you want to crew it. So, yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I did not know that about crew.
Yeah, if you had a team
Yeah.
of dwarves, you can put as much power as you want into that copter.
Oh, wow, spicy.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can even leave up your dwarfs on defense and just have your vehicle in the background, and on your opponent's, end step before it comes to your turn, tap all your dwarves down to crew the vehicle, make all your treasures, sacrifice it all, get your dragon, go to your upkeep, and on your main phase swing in for some big damage.
Nice. I think we might have to do two-headed giant. You guys are piloting this dwarf dragon vehicle treasure.
Monstrosity.
Yeah, monstrosity. And Trev and I'll just I don't know. I'll play like Talrand, and he can do something that's offensive. Well, that's what we'll do.
Something offensive.
We have Quakebringer next. It's 3 red for a 5/4 giant berserker. Your opponents can't gain life. At the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. This ability triggers only if Quakebringer is on the battlefield or if Quakebringer is in your graveyard and you control a giant, and it has foretell for 2 red.
This card is pretty good.
It's a
Like,
house.
I think. Yeah, it's definitely a house.
Yeah.
Especially because like the trigger abilities, if it's in your graveyard, if you just have another giant out, so it's like at the beginning of the upkeep, you can still get that like 2 damage ping.
Mm-hmm. It's like, think about it this way: like when it's on the battlefield, it's a one-sided sulfuric vortex. That's a 5/4. And then when it's in the graveyard, it turns all of your giants into, well, close to a sulfuric vortex. Of course, your opponents at that point could gain life, but just like that gravy of dealing 2 damage at your upkeep, it's pretty tight.
Sulfuric Vortex would be so much better if it was also a 5/4 giant berserker. and the cost didn't change. Keep the cost the same.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is basically foretelling it. That's what that would be without the extra 2 mana.
Mm-hmm. It works really well with Calamity Bearer, doubling up that damage. Works really well with Torbrand, who's an honorary giant, being a dwarf.
It's like when you call a really big guy tiny.
Yeah. So there's lots of fun ways in Standard and of course in Commander where you can just turn this into a nice value engine of damage.
I'll value my damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime a card lets you, anytime a card affects the board from the graveyard is just, I think that's what we all want. We can't have every card doing that because that would just break the game. But it just feels like you're breaking the rules when a card does that, and that feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
At your upkeep, each opponent takes 1 damage for every card in your graveyard. It's like, what?
That's when you want a Rest in Peace or a Leyline of the Void on the battlefield. Normally you don't. Also, if I mention Scavenger Grounds, Riley gets upset. Yeah. So I'm not gonna mention.
Got too many graveyard decks.
You know what, Riley? It's just a representation of how skilled you are at deck building. That I'm like, you know what? We got to put more graveyard hate in our decks because we don't. We don't put enough.
I just got to be in the camp of saying, don't listen to Kevin. Don't play graveyard hate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, distract them. Just distract them.
Yeah. It's not worth it, okay? Promise.
We have Reckless Crew next. It's 3 and a red for a sorcery. Create X 2/1 red dwarf berserker creature tokens, where X is the number of vehicles you control plus the number of equipment you control. For each of those tokens, you may attach an equipment you control to it. Ooh, there's in this two-headed giant mix of two decks that you two are going to build. Are you going to put 7 dwarfs in one of the decks? I feel like that's going to work really well.
I kind of want to
put
the 7 dwarfs in there.
Torbrand 7 dwarves.
Yeah.
But this would be great in that build.
Yeah, I mean this
actually, yeah.
I don't like. Okay, so it feels like a bit of a trap. Reckless Crew just feels like a bit of a trap. Like it feels like you have to be in a pretty strong position to get any.
It's like a win more card.
Yeah, it's a very win more card because on its face, this does nothing.
Right. No.
Like at its worst, it literally does nothing. It literally puts 0 dwarves onto the battlefield.
It's 4. Yeah.
So obviously you have to be in a pretty decent position to want this. But I do love the art. The art is pretty fantastic.
The art.
Oh yeah, the guy in the middle with the beard. Yeah.
He's just like, fucking do it.
It's so funny too because it's like boats burning real faster and this dude's just in the middle. Ah!
But
like, what are you doing?
It feels a little bit more like on the scale of dwarf to gnome. This feels very much in the realm of gnome.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious. Not sure if the card is worth playing, because I definitely wouldn't want to start the game with this in my hand. And if I feel
I don't even think it should be rare. I don't even want to open this in a pack.
This is a bad rare.
This is cards like this are why I don't open packs. Yeah, like why I don't just like.
It's an F and limited for sure. Like this is like Christmas Land to be able to even want to play this in limited.
We have Rune of Speed next. It's 1 and a red for an enchantment or a rune that enchants a permanent. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +1/+0 and has haste. And as long as enchanted permanent is an equipment, it has equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has haste.
Again, like obviously we've already talked about the runes and how we feel about them. I think something kind of interesting, if you can get both the cards, like having there's an artifact that gives a creature flying. Putting this on that artifact in limited is pretty good because then you can always just like play a creature and then it's swinging in the air already.
Yeah. I think red lends itself a little bit better to the aura theme because red and white have a little bit more support for caring about equipments and caring about auras. So I feel like this has a little bit more of a home in this slice of the color pie than some of the previous ones do, like the blue and the black auras that we've seen.
For sure. Yeah.
We have T-Balt's Trickery next. It's 1 and a red for an instant. Counter target spell. Choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then they put the exiled cards on the bottom of the library in a random order. I've heard a lot of talk about this card and its ban-worthiness in the past couple weeks, and the set hasn't even been officially released in paper. Not that anybody's playing with paper yet. By the time this episode is released, people are listening to it, it will be released. But anyways, I'm not really sure what to think about this card.
It's already making waves online and stuff. Obviously, a lot of people have talked about it already. And then Riley was mentioning how, like earlier when we were talking about Valky and Tybalt, just how like high of a percentage, like reliable this is to actually get off.
Cast it on yourself.
Yeah, that seems to be where the interest is at. I feel like this is one of those cards that they kind of, feels a lot like Chaos Warp for Commander, where like, you're getting rid of that permanent, but you're spinning the wheel and maybe they get something better or maybe they get something worse. It feels very much like that, but of course, the combo potential with countering zero mana spells that you play yourself on turn 2 and then getting an Ugin or getting another big threat like an Emrakul in Modern, that seems to be where most of the hype is. But it's very, very much like a glass cannon, right? Like it's either going to go well or it's just going to go horribly wrong and you're just a fragile combo deck.
Yeah, and I think in a 4-of format, this card is going to perform much better in the examples that you both just outlined versus Commander, where I think like Chaos Warp, like we've all heard the Chaos Warp stories. Like for example, for me, somebody Chaos Warped my Leyline of the Void, and then the card on top was Consuming Aberration. It's like, oh, you traded one devil for another.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's not even a permanent, right? And you just you don't even get to use it. In this scenario, you do get to cast it no matter what it is.
Yeah, it's not hitting a land, like it's hitting a non-land permanent. So it's likely going to be something that is worth it.
Yeah, so this card, in the 4-of formats, it's much better to, in the right deck, obviously, to counter your own spell. But I think in Commander, where this is going to see play, is just a hard counter in red to just counter whatever's, whatever that spell is. And yes, they'll get to cast something off the top of their library, but it's not going to be the spell that you countered. You at least know it's not going to be that spell. And I mean, even in non-singleton formats, the card text clearly adjusts for that. But I don't know if I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see if it's ban worthy. It's always like those comments. Those, it's like you post this and it's like, should this be banned? Yes or no? And it seems like the overarching comments on this card that I've read on social media is not that it should be banned, but that it shouldn't, or not that it should be banned because it's homogenizing the format, which is I think why any card should be banned. I think that's the overarching reason why cards should be banned. But people seem to be saying that with this card is that it shouldn't be banned because there's been so many bans already and standard players are just sick of it. So they just can't ban cards, which it is absurd, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's a pretty
not
weak
ban
argument.
a card because people are going to quit playing. Like they've never operated like that before. If they operated in a way that made their consumers happy, we wouldn't be doing this show.
And also, like, banning this card isn't like an Uro or something like that. This is just like a card that's enabling people to do a stupid glass cannon combo deck.
Yeah. No, and this isn't exactly. This isn't something that is going to probably affect. We don't know what the next sets are going to be while this card is in standard, but this probably isn't something that is going to affect standard in such a homogenizing way that they'll ban it. And I mean, we're talking about standard when we're talking about new standard sets and banning cards. That's the format we're talking about.
Because like obviously playing against somebody doing that and them getting an Ugin on turn 2 doesn't feel good. You're just like, well, that's the game.
Yeah, and there's going to be games like that, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, the format still has time to adjust, and I feel like this strategy will fold to Duress or fold to Spell Pierce, and like it's just going to be one of those things that people will have the tools to deal with, and if at the end of the day it's running rampant and actually is a viable combo that seems to be taking over the metagame, then Wizards will likely ban it. But I don't think at this. I don't think it's
going to take over.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to take over. I think it's pretty much like going to be a flash in the pan, and it's going to be one of those things that the metagame will adjust for. But we'll see.
We have Toralf, God of Fury, next. 2 red for a 5/4 legendary creature god with trample. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Toralf deals damage equal to the excess to any target other than that permanent. And the flip side is Toralf's Hammer. It's 1 and a red for a legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature has pay 1 and a red, tap, unattach Toralf's Hammer. It deals 3 damage to any target. Return Toralf's Hammer to its owner's hand. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 as long as it's legendary, and the equip cost is 1 and a red. Well, that's, in Commander, that's a really great way to just bounce that back to your hand and not worry about the Commander cost. Speaking of which, we may have addressed this last episode, but if you cast either side of this card, if you cast the non-legendary creature side of these cards from your command zone and it's destroyed, it changes zones, you decide to put it back into the command zone at the end of the day, to cast it again as either side, do you still have to pay the commander cost?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah,
because it's the same permanent cards. So
it's the same object. So it's still Toralf's Hammer and Toralf God of Fury are both your commander, so they both track the same commander tax.
Okay.
But of course, Kevin, like you were saying, you could play this if your commander cost is a little bit high. You can save 2 mana by playing the Hammer side and then throwing it back to your hand and then just playing Toralf for 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is very, very nice.
And I like this over this is nice that we have the choice, because it's once we do that ability, then it goes back, compared to last episode when we had all run, and it's just if you do player damage, it's going back.
Exactly. Yeah, that was not a May ability. You couldn't just have the crow swinging.
Yeah, but this we can still get that +3/+0 for as long as we want if it's legendary, and then, of course, if you want to put it in your hand, you can deal 3 damage to something.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Tundra Formeral. It's 1 red for a snow sorcery. It deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you add a generic mana to your mana pool for each snow mana spent to cast this spell. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. I wonder if that, because there's a lot of that in this set, you don't lose mana
as steps and phases end.
As steps and phases end. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's something that we're going to see more and more. I wonder if that's something specific to this set. I just, it always seems like they're trying to. I think from the inception of the game, it's like they've been trying to give us a better experience.
Yeah.
And I commend them for that. But just in a vacuum, I wonder if this is something that we're going to see more of, because up to this point, it's been few and far between. Much like, for example, cards that bring cards out of exile. That is also something that's quite rare.
Yeah. But then this card itself, I think, is really good in ways. It's kind of like a free removal spell, and the mana not leaving as steps and phases end is really nice too, since we can pay 3, kill something, get a better attack in, and then still play a creature after. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, this is a very super functional card.
It would, my only issue with it, okay, at the end of the day, it's essentially, if you're running the right mana base for it, being a snow mana base, it's essentially a free sorcery that deals 4 to a creature or planeswalker. I would have loved to have either seen this as an instant or a sorcery that could go face, one or the other.
Yeah, I think that would dictate this rarity, either of those.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way it is, I don't think it dictates a rare.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see, because that kind of ritual effect where you get a rebate on that mana, that's a pretty powerful effect. But just I don't know. I was kind of hoping it would go one way or another, because on its face I thought this was an instant, but no, it's a sorcery. So I'm a little bit sad about that.
Yeah, it is a little. It is a very. It's like almost there for me, but it's just a little bit underwhelming. I want to like it. I want to run it, but it's just not quite. It's not quite there for me.
Yeah.
It's like a dual deck, you know. Next up, we have Vault Robber. It's 1 and a red for a 1/3 dwarf rogue. You can pay 1, tap it to exile a creature card from your graveyard to create a treasure token. It's very flavorful. I'll give it that.
Very, yeah. And it's like your raiding party goes to find treasure, and so you lose a guy, but you still come back with the treasure.
Oh, I thought it was more of like they're just raiding like.
Yeah,
tombs.
no, they're grave robbers.
Yeah.
They're just they're busting open
Right.
coffins and taking the treasure.
Yeah, there's
off the
literally
bodies.
a coffin in the background.
And then they're just leaving the bodies. They probably pulled the bodies out of the coffins and left them on the ground. They're like, to hell with these people or dwarfs or what have you.
I got my treasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I guess I think on its face I was a little bit more excited about this card, but in reality, like it almost seems like this should be a ramp spell for red, just like a kind of a ramp spell or like what am I thinking of? Like a fertilid.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like
yeah.
a fertilid effect where you can get some repeated value from ramping.
Mm-hmm.
But just in the early parts of the game where you'd want an effect like this is likely a point in the game where you don't have a creature in the graveyard to actually exile to start getting this going. So yeah.
And I mean the other like little bummer is you also have to pay 1 to get 1.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, investing for a future turn kind of thing, but
yeah.
I don't know. I guess just how it plays out, Vault Robber is like if you're using it to fix your mana, like your colors of mana, like that's fine. Or if you really care about treasures, maybe that's fine. But it's just it just seems like there's a few too many hoops to jump through to make this actually worth playing.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
I do like the flavor text. Not that I agree with it. The flavor text is the dwarves believe works of art should be passed down the generations, not buried with the dead. I agree with that. I mean, when I'm dead, I'm planning on donating my body to science, or like throw me in the trash, or just like bury me in the ground without like I don't want any bullshit. Just like bury me, like take my organs, take my skin, take it all. Use I'm dead. I don't care. But don't bury me with my like gilded drake. Like take it. If you're not gonna play Magic, sell it. Just don't. I don't need my treasure. Like I kept my treasure. Like Violet, if you're listening to this, take my treasure. I don't need it. Honey, take the treasure. That's just how I feel.
And I don't know, a way I like to look at it is like like rings or jewelry or stuff like that. Like people keep them on them for when they get buried, but if you keep that stuff and pass it down the family, that's a way of like that person kind of like living on more as well, because they're like tokens to remember somebody by. So
absolutely, I totally agree. Not to mention that just like we are literal biological extensions of our progenitors, our parents, our grandparents, etc., etc. Like we are literally immortalizing them. But yeah, I want the treasure too. But this is going to bring us to the end of part 2 of our Kaldheim set review. We didn't get to green, but I'm sure you knew that by the show notes if you read them, but you probably don't. So we're going to bring this episode to a close. We are going to be back next week to talk about our favorite green and colorless cards. We're probably going to have to save gold for a part 4. If there were any cards that you're excited to slot into a deck or two that we've missed, you can let us know in the comments section of wherever you're listening to this, or DM us on Instagram if you're listening to this on Spotify, because they don't have a comment section, and that is upsetting. So thanks for listening, and be safe out there, and check out the giveaway. You can win a commander deck.
a whole commander deck.
A whole. You don't have to do anything.
An
It's
entire
everything you
one.
need. Yeah. All right, everybody.
All
Well,
right.
again, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Yeah, again, thanks everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye now.
T-Bolt.
Bath salt.
Turn one soul ring.
Just 1 second. My dogs got into the room. I gotta kick them out.
Oh yeah. Doggy.
Pupper dogs.
Come on. Come on. Out. Out.
He's like, come on, I'm Stanley.
I want to have fun and hang out.